So we're getting, you know, again, the public opinion is just continues to be with us. And when I was running for, so now I'm running for re-election against an incumbent who was regarded by many of his colleagues in the Democratic Party and even Republicans who I spoke to be a robo-campaigner. You know, this guy is just unstoppable. You know, you're just no way you're going to beat him, John. You know, it was nice knowing you. You know, that was the consensus among the establishment folks and my colleagues, that it was nice having you, and it's a shame that you have to go. It was their feeling. They had written me off. And so the difference this time from last time is the last time that I ran, I was unemployed and I was looking for work, but I had tons of time. I was out on the street all day long, you know, from sun up till sundown. And, you know, there was no way that people didn't see me. I knew the names of their dogs. I knew everything about people. I would visit certain people 3 and 4 times until they said yes, you know. And that's shoe leather, and we have clean elections in Maine, which is a great boon, and just, you know, I'm so proud of the model of clean elections that we have in Maine. That also freed me up to not have to be doing fundraising. So I was just going door to door and, you know, just meeting everybody in that first race. Second time around, I was working. Those 2 summers, because I had won seats, now progressive organizations were calling me to run their campaigns. Before this, you know, I was a massage therapist. I was painting houses. I was a volunteer organizer on many referenda issue in the state that have been sponsored by Greens, like the single-payer healthcare referendum that we had in Portland, Maine, which was a straw poll referendum, but still significant, up against millions of dollars of insurance, health insurance company money. We prevailed. But this was, you know, running in those races was the experience I had, and now I was getting calls to, you know, run campaigns. But that time around, the second time around, I didn't have as much time to run because I was coordinating this campaign statewide. So I was concerned because now I don't have as much time, and my candidate's my opponent's a robo campaigner, so-called. And so we definitely probably did half the effort that we did the first time. But we have some things going for us. We have all this press that we've had for 2 years, and we have some incumbency now, even though my opponent also has incumbency. And because I've moved now, I have 70% of the district that I used to represent, had been representing. And through my office, we never missed an opportunity to use the office to reach out. So having had that office was key, and we were sending out letters every day, 50 to 100 letters every day through my franking privileges at the legislature. And these were all sorts of maps inviting people to call. I took out a regular ad in the local paper inviting people to call, and it was really working. I mean, people were saying this is the most active sort of representation that we've ever experienced. You know, and so this was definitely the method that we continue to use, which is just to continue to reach out to people, not to accept that we're there, that people will call us, and that we're sitting by the phone, but that we're actively all the time trying to provoke people to call us for whatever reason, and we're gaining this reputation as being doing great constituent service now. So we having running now for that seat for re-election, running up against this robo campaigner, and now the Kerry campaign is on. And even though clean elections disallows it, my opponent is able to get all sorts of extra information through the Kerry campaign secretively. He's being passed numbers, data numbers, and these data numbers we're finding out are saying that we have approval over this opponent 3 to 1. But even though we hear that, when you're running a campaign, the one thing you always presume is that whatever you're doing, your opponent's doing the exact same thing, and she's doing it 10 times better than you're doing. You know, so that you really have to always, you never rest. So we're hearing those numbers, but we're not resting, and we're not relaxing. And in the end, we prevailed over this opponent. It was a three-way race, and we prevailed over that opponent by, I think it's 12%, and in this three-way race. And then that was real. The first time it was a fluke. The first time it was really considered a fluke, that we really had ran the stealth campaign by their lights. We caught them off guard. They disparaged their own candidate from the first race, saying, "Oh, that guy was terrible. Even though, you know, we're glad he didn't win. Let me tell you that. And anybody could beat him, you know." And so, that was just a fluke. So when we won the second time, it was really much more significant, really, in certain ways. It was quieter. It wasn't as much fanfare. But now we were serious. It wasn't really a joke, and it wasn't a fluke. And when I returned to the State House after winning re-election, I didn't get tickled under the chin and patted on the head. I wasn't cute anymore. Folks looked at me and the staff as though we were some sort of ghosts. You know, they were just kind of freaked out now because we won the seat for a second time. So the second session was much different in that, has been much different. I just finished the first year of that session, because now in the second session there's a closer vote, and the policies that we're introducing, many of the policies that were absconded with by the Democrats in the first term, many of the bills that I introduced were folded into other bills and given to Democrats in certain ways, which is great because we're looking, when we talk about, in theory, what happens when the Greens interact in electoral politics, we're talking about several things that happen. We're going to push the parties to respond to us either by picking it up themselves and doing it, or by getting out of the way and we do it. And what was clear in the first 2 years of the session is that the legislation that I had was getting picked up by Democrats. In fact, I had moved to introduce a resolution against the war in Iraq, and this Democratic senator, and you needed a House member to sign on and approval from the Speaker of the House, and you needed a Senate member to sign on. And my senator, who is the senator of my district and the 3 districts surrounding us, is a very progressive guy. Very ambitious and driven guy, and he's heading for Congress, and everybody knows that. But he's fairly liberal, and probably the most liberal member of the Senate for sure. And so I went to go approach him about being my co-sponsor on this, because you need a House and a Senate member to pass this resolution. He says, "Well, I don't know. I don't want to cause any trouble or buck the leadership." And I said, "Well, we're not. We're doing it by the numbers here. This is what we do. I have the resolution in it. It's being written up right now by the lawyers from the revisor's office, and all you need to do is ask the Senate President." So a couple of days later, this bill I had sponsored, this resolution that I had sponsored, has somehow disappeared from the revisor's office. Well, because there's really the Speaker and the Senate President need to sign on to it. So they don't sign on to the resolution that I've introduced, but my senator takes this very same resolution, written exactly the same, and now he's the sponsor. And now when they look for a House sponsor, they get the floor leader of the Democratic Party in the House, which overall is much better, but it turns into this kind of bitter partisan fight rather than what I intended to do. And when I stood up and spoke on the floor, I spoke about both parties' tendencies toward war. I took the opportunity to make the distinction that the Green Party was the anti-war party, was the peace party, and sort of pointed the fingers and had a laugh at both of them. And it became this bitter battle. It passed the Senate, and it failed the House, just narrowly failed the House along party lines. But it was the only, I was the only legislature in the country that even got such legislation through the Senate. Many municipalities across the country have passed resolutions, but Maine came close, and so that was printed up in the nation, and thankfully the nation gave me a call, and actually to his credit, the senator had felt bad because now here was another bit of press that this thing has been stolen from the Green. And we didn't even try to fuel that. I didn't want to give the impression that I was at odds with the senator in my district. I didn't want to try to fuel that. So this somehow got picked up anyhow, and that was in the news. So it seems like every step that our opponents are trying to take just blows up in their face, and they must be really frustrated at this point, that everything that they try to do just ends up blowing up in their face. So what I've been able to do this session, being a more crucial vote, is particularly when it comes to the budget process, I've been able to really have a say in the budget process. The Democrats just assume I'm going to vote with them, and budgets are awful, and there are all these cuts to social services in them, and the budgets have just been terrible. And in any particular budget, state budget, you'll find things that are wonderful, like new funding for libraries, and you'll find things that are just awful, like cuts to to folks with brain injuries and the physical therapy that they receive. So the budgets are pretty much terrible. So now I found that this is a way that I can play my role and get involved, because they need my vote because of such a narrow split. And so now this past budget cycle, I was able to secure funding for $500,000 for half $500,000, which is significant to me, for what I'm terming an arts incubator. There's been a lot of talk in Maine and across the country about the creative economy, and luckily the governor in Maine has been pursuing this creative economy. So I asked to be made the House Chair of a Creative Economy Council, and so now I'm the House Chair of the Governor's Creative Economy Council, overseeing technology people, bankers. My strong suit has never been the economy. One of my passions has been art, and so this seemed like a great opportunity for me to address one of my passions and one of my strengths, and then try to conquer one of my weaknesses, which is not knowing enough about the economy. And so now there's these two things that have come together in the realm I feel comfortable in, and so I'm the chair of a council of some 25 people, bankers and technology people and artists. So that's been really exciting. We just had a recent meeting a couple of days ago, and the governor sits next to me now, and in order to get my vote on the budget, I said I want to be the chair of this, and I want $500,000 for this creative economy. So now I sit next to the governor, and he has to say great things about me because he's made me the chair of this Creative Economy Council. And he seems to be somewhat serious about this initiative, although he's primarily, a smokestack industry's tax break sort of guy. He has been, because it seems only smart, really, it's a smart thing to do, he's been embracing the creative economy. So now this is a hot thing in Maine, the idea of the creative economy, and there's a Green as the House Chair of that. And I've been recently asked to chair the county's Health and Human Services Committee, called up by a county commissioner who's a Republican, and I guess wanted to appear balanced, but didn't want to ask a Democrat to co-chair with her. So really interesting things are happening, and it's just it's just building. One really kind of awful thing that's happened, and I just want to impart to you guys because I think it's really important, and it's a story that needs to be told, and we're trying to get the nation to write a story about it now. But we held a special election in Biddeford, Maine, a small town in Maine, 2 years back. Well, 2 years ago now. It was a special election campaign because invariably in the legislature somebody passes away or falls ill or for some reason drops out in every 2-year cycle. It always happens. So we had this candidate who was a very volatile personality who had stood down the seizure of her home because of back taxes with weapons in her house. She had been a Green. She'd run as a Green city councilor before, and her longtime boyfriend is a former police officer from the town, and he still had his sidearm, and they said, you'd have to pull us out of this house, and we're prepared to fight to keep our house. And somehow this got in the media across the state, and somehow some militia from the Midwest had found out about this and agreed to defend to the death this woman's house. And that was before we ran her as a candidate. Those were her qualifying. That's what qualified her. And so in the special election, she came forward with, and that happened just a year before the special election. They didn't jail her because they just ended up seizing her house. She came out peacefully. But the police in that town, that they saw her walking on the street after what they thought was, a great injustice and a slap in their face, just made them boiling mad. And now in the special election, she comes forth and she brings enough people to the meeting to nominate her to be, to run for the office for the special election. And we have 3 weeks to run this campaign, and we realized this really kind of volatile person who was probably going to use this campaign and use even the clean elections money to talk about her house, which is a done deal. And we really don't want this to happen. So we see this as an opportunity to learn how do you run one of these elections, and at the same time we feel like we really need to kind of control this situation down there before it kind of really hurts a lot of the good recognition that we have been getting. So that was the decision we made and we were faced with. So we did actually get the candidate to agree not to talk about her house, not really to talk to the press, because this was not a campaign that was going to be run in the press, because it was only 3 weeks to do it. So we started running an absentee ballot campaign, and we collected an amazing, and now this is a campaign that's being run by elderly people, low-income people who've never ever been involved in politics before. Some of them, hardly have ever voted in their life, and now they're involved in politics. They're sort of anti-government people, and now they're being involved in politics and working really hard. And we collect some 250 absentee ballots in a race that probably only has 500 votes cast in the winter and February in Maine. And they've just re-established the polling places, and many people don't even know where to vote. So we did so well that when the Democrats got on the ground 3 days before the election, the first time that they sent their operatives down to the town, they realized that we have 250 ballots in the can, and they get so freaked out that they call the cops. They call the cops to say something's wrong here. And it seems that they coerced several of their members by going to some older folks and saying, Gladys, you voted as a Democrat your entire life. What the hell happened here? You voted for this Green, don't you realize? And Gladys says, oh my God, what did I do? Did I? These men in suits standing there at her door, and telling her something's gone wrong, call the cops. So they are mad. They get several complaints against us in this way, and there's an investigation that begins. But because the opponent wins, he says he's not going to press charges. It's really funny because, press charges because this is all trumped up. But he's won, so he says he's not interested in pressing charges. And some 7 months later, 3 weeks before my re-election, and in the first week in October, all this time, this information, we thought it was done. It was dropped in our laps in the form of an October surprise that they had decided to indict several members, including my aide. So then my opponent went around telling people that there was voter fraud in the election, and that I was behind this voter fraud. So, the synopsis of what we've been experiencing over the past couple of years is that, at all costs, the establishment wants to, destroy any effort any inroads that we've made. And, but it continues to sort of backfire on them, because they continue to sort of overplay their hand, And then what happens is that they continue to sort of have the press not be in their favor. So being, having served as an elected official for the past 2 years now, I think that the prognosis for the Greens is really fantastic. I think that there's nowhere to go but up. Our numbers are increasing in Maine, our numbers are increasing across the country, and that we're going to prevail. And these small victories, as we said early on, we serve only one of only 8 serving third-party legislators in the country. So to think about how significant that is, 6 of them are from Vermont, from the Progressive Party. So to think that how significant, even though it seems really minuscule, state legislature, it seems like things are, it's a million miles away before we're really addressing things on the national level. But it's really not so far away. And what we see is every time we push further into it, we see that there's really a paper tiger. So the other 2 parties really are a paper tiger. They've kind of relied on perception for so many years that they're unbeatable, that they're unstoppable, that there's no way to make inroads. But they're all just sitting around, whether it be a Democratic city committee, which has about 5 or 6 people there, biting their nails, thinking, I hope they don't find out there's only 5 or 6 of us here running the show. And then at a Green meeting, there's 5 or 6 or 8 people sitting there in a local city committee meeting, and we're thinking, oh, that this is an insurmountable monster, we'll never beat it. But it turns out, we match for the level of activism, for the small number of members that we have compared to the Democratic or the Republican Party, we're matching them on their level of activism. When I go out door to door, when our candidates go out door to door, they're accompanied every day by a volunteer going door to door with them who writes down notes. The Democratic candidates can't get somebody to go out with them even 1 night a week, 2 nights a week. They're just, nobody's really interested, and they haven't been. Now what we're seeing across the country, the Democrats in particular, are now they're renewed interest in young people. They sort of lost their interest, I think, in going to young people, and now they have this renewed interest in really trying to get young people to participate in campaigns. A lot of these 527 groups were sort of focused on bringing young people into the process in this past presidential campaign. And some of those 527 groups have become very green-oriented and have supported Greens, I think, to the chagrin of the Democratic Party in Maine, certainly to their chagrin in Maine. So, I think the prognosis is definitely good that we have 2 more members in the House. If we have 1 more member in the House in Maine, if we have 1 more member on the school board, we're controlling, we have the potential to control the State House and the legislature with just a few votes. If I had 1 more Green who would join me up there, we could decide who's the Speaker of the House. We could decide who is the, we could decide, and who all the constitutional officers are. We can, the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, people who have been gunning for us for the past couple of years, and this is why they've gone to the lengths that they have, trying to redistrict us and trying to indict us and besmirch our good name, is because so much is at stake with just a couple of Greens. So whatever you do back home, what I learned was a friend of mine that said, well, when you win the State House seat, there's going to be lots of interest generated. It'll have a national, there'll be national interest. And I thought, I think you're dreaming. Nobody's going to be interested in this. But when you realize the significance of that, only 8 third-party legislators, when you realize the significance of how 1 or 2 Greens in a state house like Maine, when there's a sharp split, can have such a tremendous effect, you've got to think, you've got to really believe that what you're doing when you're running for office, when you're supporting candidates, is of supreme importance. Because to me it seems like, in my short experience, that the distance between having 1 person in and really exercising some serious control is really a short jog between those 2 things. So I'm so glad that that you're here and that you're interested in running campaigns, I want to be of whatever service that I can to have, you know, to get more information out about the campaign manual, that we have lots of information about printing materials that we'd like to share. Here's Mike Feinstein's piece, and this is a great piece. And it was said earlier today before we started that, you know, we haven't been making good print pieces. There's some really nitty-gritty stuff about how to make a good print piece, how to find the printers to do it, you know, how to do it. It can be done affordably. You know, there's lots of houses on the internet, some that are unionized, who can do, you know, great work, full color pieces. You know, you can get it printed on recycled paper. You can use soy ink. You know, pieces like this, you know, are fractions of a penny a piece. So to employ some of the technology, like we've been using automated phone calling when we have to reach constituencies. We use it now even as we're in office to invite people to call us. We've used some phone survey companies, because when we're going door to door, we can only meet a few hundred people, and these phone survey companies can survey thousands of people in a couple of nights and then shoot the data back to us. So we're using phone survey companies, we're using good old shoe leather. Number one, if nothing else, it's shoe leather. You know, it's just getting, I mean, if you only had black and white photocopies and you went door to door every day in your district and spent whatever time it took and took the voters list, and if you could just get the voters list from your town and use that voters list as your roadmap. You got all sorts of data on there about when the last time this person voted was, their phone number. In Maine, we have their phone number. We know, you know, do they vote in primaries? Do they vote in special elections? Do they only vote in the presidential? Do they vote in off-year elections? We can call all this information and do targeted. It's really easy, and it really kind of attractive for me and obsessive when you start, you know, to get into this sort of detail. It's really fun. I've always sort of had a, you know, feeling toward marketing, only, you know, marketing for the right purposes, you know. And using a lot of this data, using the technology, you've got people all around you who, you know, can manipulate this technology well and use it to our advantage. So you need, even if you only have black and white photocopy, the shoe leather, you go around, you just talk to people. You know, if they like you, some people offer, in Maine I can't take the money, but some people say, you know, I really like you, John, can I give you $5, $10, what can I give you? Those $5 or $10 you can go out and buy, make more photocopies, maybe raise enough money because you have some dinners and some fundraisers, or, you know, a karaoke night, and you can buy this nice piece, and you can buy signage if, you know, in all events, or in all cases, or you can, you know, you can be really creative. But the basis is using the voter data, using good voter data, using fresh voter data, going door to door and just pounding the doors. Now, I know some people live in really large districts where door to door is different, but what you have to do is be smarter in that case. You have to find out the districts that are the battleground districts, you know, break them up by municipal districts if you're running for county office, or you have very small county districts, that's ideal. Because wherever we can just meet people and come with a fresh perspective and talk to them, it's winning right away. I mean, it's so rare that I ever would go to a door that I would have a negative interaction. You know, people are so happy that you're bringing democracy to their door, because the other parties stopped doing that a long time ago, really. You know, the only reason they're starting to do it now in Maine, and they've forgotten how to do it, they've totally atrophied, is because they haven't done it in 30 years. You know, so when we go door to door, you're doing a great service just then and there. So begin to already feel like you're an elected official, because you're going and you're asking people what's important to them, what do they need. If you can follow up with them later on when you go home with a phone call or a postcard to say, you know, it was great to have met you, you know, it was nice to meet your dog, Skippy, and you know, these things work. And when they get that note the next day after having this interaction with you, and maybe somebody gave you $5 and you bought some postcard stamps, and you've got your photocopied postcard on cardstock with your logo on it, and on the other side is a note from you. That's unbeatable, you know? I mean, if you've had that kind of connection with somebody, that personal connection is unbeatable, and that's what the Greens are doing, and how we'll prevail is taking it right back down to the personal level, one-on-one, and inviting people to participate. You know, in the district where I won because we invited 80% of the people in my town are renters. And the local Democratic Party refers to these renters, 80% of the people, as transients. And they never go to those people. You know, they never go to try to win the support of those people. Because for years they could just win by going to the people who voted in the Democratic primaries and the hardcore Democrats. They took them to victory every time. It was basically a given. You ran as a Democrat, you were in. You know, and in your districts it may be a given with the Republicans. You run as a Republican, you're in. You know, but you know, waking up that hidden lion, you know, is what they're afraid of, because they don't want to work that hard. Bottom line is, they don't want to work as hard as that. You know, I mean, my job in the legislature pays $8,000 a year, okay? So it's basically a volunteer position. So, you know, they don't want to work that hard. We're willing to work that hard. We're willing to bring democracy to people's doors, and that's the politics of myth. I don't know that that ever existed. You know, they say good old-fashioned politics. You know, well, for 30 years that hadn't existed in Maine where we are. So that's how we're going, I think, to prevail. And that's by just reviving that, and also just bringing power to the people in your campaign who have never been involved in politics, and then translating, you know, bringing that opportunity to be involved to the people of your district. They're going to love you for it, and you'll change as a person by it. You know, there's no way that you won't grow by the experience, win or lose. And the party, win or lose, the party will grow. You know.